Hi, I'm Sarah, a 28-year-old soon-to-be mom caught in the middle of what feels like a financial thriller in my own home. Before we dive deep into the chaos, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to follow along with my tumultuous journey. Let's get right into it. Going through our finances had become my routine, especially crucial now with a baby on the way. Everything seemed normal until I stumbled upon a staggering $50,000 charge on our credit card statement. My heart skipped a beat. This had to be a mistake. We had been so careful, saving every penny for our baby. Holding up the bill, I called out from the kitchen table, shaking slightly. "Thomas, can you come here for a second?" Thomas walked in, his demeanor calm, a coffee in hand. He didn't even flinch at the sight of the statement. "Yeah, what's up?" I pointed at the screen, my voice a mix of confusion and concern. "Did you see this charge for $50,000? What is this? It has to be a mistake, right?" He glanced at the statement and casually took a sip of his coffee. "Oh, that. Don't worry about it. I've got it covered." "Got it covered? Thomas, we can't just have 50 grand disappearing from our account. What did you spend it on?" "It's nothing you need to worry about. Trust me, okay? I'm handling it." His dismissive tone only fueled my anxiety. "Handling it? No. This is our money. We need it for the hospital, for the nursery." "Hey, just relax. You're stressing yourself out over nothing. It's under control." He tried to brush off the conversation, clearly eager to end it, but I couldn't just let it go. "No, Thomas, talk to me. We're supposed to be partners. What did you spend $50,000 on?" He paused at the doorway, his back to me. "I told you, I'm handling it. Just leave it, okay?" But leaving it was not an option. Not with so much at stake. Not with our baby on the way. I was determined to get to the bottom of this. The next day, while Thomas was at work, I started my own investigation. I called the credit card company under the guise of checking for potential fraud. "Hi, I noticed a large transaction that I don't recall authorizing. Could you tell me where exactly this charge was made?" The customer service rep was more than helpful, perhaps sensing my distress. "The charge was made at a luxury car dealership and several high-end boutiques. Would you like me to send you the itemized details?" My heart sank further with each word. "Yes, please. That would be very helpful. Thank you." When I received the details, the truth was harder to digest than I anticipated. Designer clothes, a luxury watch, and even a down payment on a sports car filled the list. This was not just mindless spending. It was calculated and lavish, completely out of character for Thomas. That evening when Thomas came home, I confronted him again, this time with every receipt spread out on the dining table. He turned pale at the sight. "Thomas, a sports car? Designer dresses? What is this? Explain this to me now." Cornered, he shifted uncomfortably on his feet. "You went behind my back? You called the bank?" "Yes, I did, because you wouldn't talk to me. You wouldn't tell me what's happening." His defenses rose as he replied, "It's complicated. I didn't want to worry you." "Worry me? Thomas, I am worried. What's going on? Are we in trouble?" He sighed deeply, looking defeated. "It's about my sister, Violet." "Violet? What does she have to do with all of this?" He hesitated. Then the story began to pour out, revealing more than I ever expected. But that's a tale for the next episode. After Thomas spilled the beans about Violet, I knew I had to confront her directly. I couldn't just sit back and let her manipulate our lives, especially not with a baby on the way. I arranged to meet her at a cafe downtown, a public place where she couldn't just storm off easily. I needed answers. As I sat down across from Violet, her smile didn't reach her eyes. She sipped her latte, unaware of the storm brewing across the table. "So, Violet, Thomas tells me you've been needing some financial help." Violet raised an eyebrow, her grip tightening around the cup. "Oh? And why would Thomas discuss our arrangements with you?" "It's not just any arrangement, Violet. $50,000 isn't just pocket change. What did you need it for?" She leaned back, assessing me with a cold gaze. "Sarah, I'm his sister. He was helping me out. That's what family does. They help each other. But buying you a sports car, designer dresses, that's not just helping, that's indulging." Violet's smile finally faded. "Look, I don't have to explain myself to you. Thomas wanted to help, and I didn't force him. But you manipulated him. You knew we were saving for the baby. How could you?" Her face hardened. "Thomas has his own money, Sarah. Not everything he earns needs to go into your little family project. I clenched my fists, trying to keep my cool. It's not just a project, Violet. It's our future. Why would you jeopardize that? Violet shrugged, a dismissive flick of her wrist. I don't see why you're making such a big deal out of this. He can earn more. I couldn't believe her audacity. It's a big deal because it's our life, Violet, and you're gambling with it like it's a game. Well, maybe if you weren't so controlling, Thomas wouldn't feel the need to hide things from you. That hit a nerve. I'm not controlling. I'm being responsible. There's a difference, Violet. She just smirked, her confidence unwavering. Whatever you need to tell yourself, Sarah, just know this. Thomas will always be my brother before he's your husband. He'll always help me when I need it. Fuming, I stood up, my chair scraping loudly against the concrete. This isn't over, Violet. I won't let you ruin our lives. Violet stood as well, her eyes cold and challenging. Do what you must, Sarah. But remember, I'm not the enemy here. You might want to take a closer look at your husband. I stormed out of the cafe, her words echoing in my mind. But I couldn't focus on Thomas now. I had to protect what was mine, and if Violet thought she could walk all over me, she had another thing coming. Back at home, I confronted Thomas again, this time with new fire fueled by Violet's defiance. You knew she was using the money for all that, and you said nothing. Thomas looked weary, rubbing his temples. Sarah, I thought it was a temporary thing. I didn't realize she'd go this far. Temporary? Thomas, we're talking about tens of thousands of dollars. How could you think this was okay? He sighed, looking anywhere but at me. I don't know, Sarah. I just wanted to keep the peace. Keep the peace? At the expense of your own child's future? He didn't have an answer to that. He just shook his head, the weight of the situation finally dawning on him. I'm sorry, Sarah. I didn't think she'd take it this far. I really didn't. His apology sounded sincere, but it was hard to accept. Sorry isn't going to fix this, Thomas. We need to take action. We need to stop her before she does more damage. He nodded slowly, his resolve firming. You're right. I'll fix this. I promise. But promises were cheap, and trust was expensive. I had to make sure Violet couldn't hurt us anymore. I needed a plan, and I needed it fast. This was more than just money. This was about securing our family's future, and I was ready to fight for it. After the showdown with Violet, I knew I couldn't just sit back and hope for the best. Thomas was trying, but Violet? She was a whole other story. I had to outsmart her, and I had just the plan. I started by acting defeated around Violet, letting her think she had won. Whenever she called, I was passive, uninterested in the details. Yeah, Violet, whatever you think is best, I'd say, keeping my tone weary and defeated. Meanwhile, I was making moves. I transferred the remaining funds from our joint account into a new one only I could access. It wasn't easy, but I managed it with some clever maneuvering and a lot of help from the bank's understanding manager. Next, I set the bait for Violet. During one of our dull phone conversations, I casually mentioned a supposed upcoming transaction. You know, Violet, despite everything, Thomas is expecting a big bonus soon. He mentioned something about putting it straight into the old account. Crazy, right? Given all that's happened. Violet perked up immediately. Oh, a bonus, you say? How substantial are we talking? I shrugged, even though she couldn't see. Pretty significant. Could really help smooth things over with some of our plans. Her interest was piqued. I could hear it in her voice. Well, that's good to hear. Maybe I was a bit harsh last time we spoke. You know, family should stick together. Absolutely, I agreed, biting back my anger. Family first, right? The call ended with Violet in a much cheerier mood, thinking she had managed to manipulate me once again. Little did she know, she was walking right into my trap. A few days later, I got a notification from the bank, an attempted large withdrawal from the old account. Bingo. I called Thomas immediately. She took the bait. Violet tried to drain the account today. Thomas was silent for a moment, then let out a deep sigh. I can't believe she'd go this far. What do we do now? It's time to confront her, together. She needs to see we know everything. We arranged to meet Violet at our house, under the guise of discussing family finances. When she arrived, she was all smiles, thinking she was about to become richer. As soon as she sat down, Thomas started. Violet, we know you tried to take the money today, the money that wasn't there. Violet's smile faltered. What? What are you talking about? I thought... You thought wrong, I cut in. We've been on to you for a while now, trying to steal from your own family, Violet. How could you? Her face turned red, then white. She stammered, trying to come up with an excuse, any excuse. But we had her cornered, and she knew it. I needed it. You don't understand, things have been hard for me. Hard for you? Thomas's voice rose. What about us? What about your nephew or niece on the way? Did you even think about them? Violet looked down, defeated. I didn't... I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't cut it this time, I said firmly. We want you out of our finances, and out of our lives, Violet. We can't trust you anymore. The confrontation was harsh but necessary. Violet left our house with nothing but a warning to never try something like this again. Thomas and I watched her go, a mix of sadness and relief in our eyes. We did it, he said, squeezing my hand. We did, I replied. Now let's make sure she never has the chance to do this to anyone else ever again. The trap was set and sprung. Now it was time to deal with the aftermath and rebuild, but at least now we could do it without looking over our shoulders. The sting of betrayal hung heavy in the air, as Thomas and I prepared for what we hoped would be the final showdown with Violet. Our plan was clear: expose her for good and protect our family's future. The day unfolded with tension as we awaited Violet's inevitable reaction to the blocked transaction. It wasn't long before my phone rang. It was her, and she was furious. Thomas needs to fix this mess. I tried to take out the money, and it was declined. What's going on? Her voice was sharp, like a knife twisting with every word. Thomas signaled to me. He was recording the call, everything set to capture her confession. Violet, calm down. Why did you need to withdraw such a large amount suddenly? I had some expenses, okay? Thomas said it was fine. You guys were supposed to help me. Violet, we never agreed to this. You took advantage without asking. You need to stop this. Her voice cracked, anger seeping through each syllable. I don't care. You owe me, Thomas. After everything I've done to cover for you, to help you with your career, you owe me a part of that inheritance, whether you like it or not. Is that what this is about? The money? Violet, you can't just claim things that aren't yours. We've been supporting you out of goodwill, not obligation. You think I care about goodwill? I need that money, Thomas, and you're going to give it to me or else. Or else what, Violet? What are you going to do? There was a pause, a breathless, heavy silence before she spat out her next words. You'll regret it if you don't. I'll make sure of that. The threat hung between us, stark and undeniable. Thomas kept his cool, his voice steady. You're not in a position to demand anything, Violet. I've got everything on tape, everything you've said just now. What? You're recording this? You traitor! I'm your sister. And I'm supposed to be your brother, not your ATM, Violet. I hoped it wouldn't come to this. Furious and desperate, Violet showed up at our house later that day, pounding on the door like a storm. Thomas opened it, trying to talk some sense into her, but she was beyond reason. In her frenzy, she pushed Thomas, and he stumbled back, losing his balance. The altercation escalated quickly, and before I knew it, Thomas was on the ground, clutching his arm, pain etched across his face. I called 911 as Violet stood there, her anger dissolving into shock at what she'd done. I didn't mean to. The paramedics arrived, and Thomas was taken to the hospital. I followed, leaving Violet behind, alone with the chaos she'd created. Sitting in the hospital waiting room, the reality of it all sunk in. Thomas was hurt because of his own sister's greed and desperation. The recording had captured every word, every threat, enough to expose her and keep her away for good. Thomas was eventually treated for a fractured wrist and some bruises, a painful but non-life-threatening reminder of how far Violet had fallen. We filed a police report, and with the evidence of the recording, it was clear this was more than just a family dispute. As Thomas rested, I made a promise to myself and our unborn child. No more secrets, no more lies, and no more letting anyone, family or not, jeopardize our future. Violet had crossed a line, and now there was no going back. The events of the past weeks seemed like a whirlwind, and now, as I sat in the quiet of my own home with my newborn baby beside me, it was time to face the aftermath and rebuild from the rubble of betrayal and deceit. After Thomas was discharged from the hospital, The first thing we did was take the recording to the police. Pressing charges against Violet was a hard decision, but necessary. She was charged with assault and fraud. Due to her lack of prior offenses, the legal consequences weren't as severe as they could have been, but it was enough to ensure she wouldn't be able to harm us again. She was left ostracized, her actions having burned almost every bridge she had. During this turbulent time, I came to a painful realization about Thomas. I saw his weaknesses, his inability to set boundaries with his sister, his reluctance to be transparent with me, and understood that our paths had to diverge if I was to provide a stable environment for my child. I filed for divorce, a process fraught with its own set of challenges, yet necessary for our ultimate peace. As the divorce proceedings unfolded, Thomas struggled. He battled depression, his career took a hit, and he found himself grappling with the consequences of years of misplaced loyalties and poor decisions. Despite our separation, I hoped he would find his way through the darkness, not just for his sake, but for our child's as well. In the midst of this, I turned my focus to the new life I had before me, my beautiful baby. The joy and responsibility of being a mother gave me a strength I never knew I had. I started working from home, took up freelance projects, and gradually built a small but stable income. My days were busy, filled with the laughter and cries of my baby, and each day brought its own set of small victories and challenges. I renovated the spare room into a bright, cozy nursery, filling it with books and toys, envisioning a future where the shadows of the past no longer loomed over us. I made new friends, other single parents who understood the tightrope walk of raising a child on one's own. We supported each other, sharing tips and moments of respite in the chaos of parenthood. Each step forward was a step away from the turmoil that had engulfed my life. I learned to trust again, but more importantly, I learned to trust myself, to make decisions that were best for me and my child, independent of the expectations or manipulations of others. As I rocked my baby to sleep one evening, the sunset casting a warm glow through the window, I felt a sense of peace. The road ahead would not be without its bumps, but I was ready to face them. With my child's hand in mine, I was not just moving forward. I was stepping into a new chapter of hope and independence. Looking out at the starry sky, I whispered a promise to my little one and to myself. We're going to be just fine. And in that moment, I believed it. And that brings our story to a close. Do you agree with the decision they made, or would you have chosen a different path? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspectives. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel for more engaging content like this. Your support helps us keep these stories coming.